Did it? Okay. We are recording.
Yep.
All right. Well, good morning again, everybody. So today's meeting of the Region 14 Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group. Today is November 2nd, 2021, and for record, we're starting at 9:16 a.m. And so moving on to the agenda, recognition of guests. Item number 2, do we have anybody joining us that is not a voting and non-voting member? Do we have any other guests? Anybody on the phone that might want to introduce themselves?
Sal, can you click on Sal? Oh, no, he's not there. Okay, never mind.
Okay, hearing none. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 3, member updates. And so we've been, we were together recently last week, so it almost seems like yesterday then I was with everybody, so I have nothing new to share. Does anybody have any new things going on they want to bring up?
This is Dave. I think it's interesting to note that the Rio Grande Citizens Forum occurred on Thursday, October 28th, and it was quite interesting. There was a lot of discussion there about levees and levee projects with IBWC, and so it shows that there are people paying attention to some of the subject areas that we've been addressing. That's it.
And I did hear from some of these Citizens Forum members that there's going to be openings coming up soon for that. And so in case you all are interested in submitting your name to that. I also want to recognize Judy Albus from the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. I don't believe she's spoken. I don't think her camera is on, but she did state on the chat that she's with us. All right, anything else? Anything?
Sure, this is Delbert from IBWC. I'm going to go ahead and post a link in the chat to the presentations from that Citizens Forum in case it's of interest to the group.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Item number 4 is the net takeover. Review and approve the minutes for the meeting held on October 15, 2021.
Yes. Attached to the agenda is are the minutes for the meeting on October the 15th, which was chaired by Dave Hall. If there are any questions, I can answer those right now. I know Dave is reviewing them and maybe had some suggested changes, perhaps. Is that correct, Dave?
No,
I'm
happy with.
But, yeah, so I just would ask if anybody would want to make a motion to approve.
This is Delbert. I noticed for the non-voting members present, it defines it in the key as an X instead of a check mark. It's a small thing, but it kind of mislabels who was present, absent. Other than that, I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to point that out.
I can make that correction.
Move to accept the minutes with the corrections.
I'll second.
Carlos, I think.
Who made the second?
Levi Bryan.
Okay, thank you, Levi.
Okay, with the first and the second, I do note I was not there last meeting, so I abstain. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 5, update from the Texas Water Development Board.
We do not have Richard here with us today, so there won't be any updates from Water Development Board.
Are you guys able to see me?
Oh,
no?
Okay.
Nope.
Richard, I didn't see you. I was emailing you right now saying, are you here? Okay, thank you.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no worries. Hi, everyone. This is Richard Bagans with the Water Development Board. Couple updates for you all. So the additional funding that was allocated by the legislature, the draft contracts amendments with Rio Grande COG was sent to Rio Grande COG and the chair. for them to comment on. And so you all, I believe we had discussed with Annette and Omar of bringing those amendments before you all at the November 30th meeting to give them approval to go ahead with the contract amendment and give any feedback on the task items and the task allocation. So that will be sent out to you all and discussed at the next meeting. Just a reminder, the tech memo deliverables, we had extended some of the tech memo deliverables to March, but there was an email blast sent out to the technical consultants last Friday, clarifying some of the Exhibit D data submittal guidelines for things that are due in the tech memo. And lastly, I'll just give a brief update. Your guys' consultants, AECOM, have brought forth several good questions regarding the state what happens when projects are over state boundaries, accreditation of levees, and modeling of different dams within the Rio as well. We've had several discussions with your consultants, with my director, Reem, and Supervisor James. So we are working with them, and they are fruitful questions that we'll be applying to the rest of the regions. So we are very thankful for their assistance in that. And so we'll be getting them the written responses soon to those. And other than that, that's all the updates that I have right now. Does anybody have any questions for me at this time? All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Richard. All right, item number 6, update from Sarah Douglas for Region 15.
Hi, I apologize about this, guys, but I'm having a little bit of difficulty finding my notes on the last Region 15 meeting. I'm sure that they're here somewhere, though. Do you mind if I maybe move this update towards later in the meeting or email it out to y'all?
Sure thing, no problem. We'll bring up the item again later.
Appreciate that.
Moving on, item number 7, discussion and potential action regarding administrative expenses to be submitted to the Texas Water Development Board for reimbursement.
Yes, as you can see, there is no backup for this agenda item. We're still going to be working out those items. So for sure at the November 30th flood planning meeting, we will have those reimbursements ready for AECOM and for Rio Grande Council Governments. So no action is required at this point.
Okay. Item number 8, AECOM, general RFP update.
Good morning. Thank you, Omar. Gilbert Ondujo with AECOM here. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody that showed up to the meeting on Wednesday, our first public meeting that we had out there at the H2O Tech Center. We had quite a few people there. I kind of wish a little more of the public showed up, but with that being said, today we're going to give you updates on our progress, and we've got members of our team here that will be assisting with that. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brian. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Gilbert. Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to talk through general RFP updates as well as some subcommittee updates, and then share some updates regarding the open house from last week, and also get any feedback that you all may have from that meeting for those who are able to attend. So we'll have a fairly short update on the general RFP side. This past month, we've been busy with several subcommittee meetings since the last RFPG meeting. In the middle of October, we've met for the subcommittee 1 and subcommittee 3 to discuss the goals and the FMEs and FMSs. As I mentioned, we had the open house meeting last week, and we're also reaching out to key stakeholders that may not have responded to the stakeholder survey or indicated in the survey that they have other information to share. So we're continuing that process. We're also engaged with the existing and future condition flood risk analysis, which is part of task 2. We're drafting the goals and recommendations for vote for an upcoming vote soon for recommendations by the subcommittee 1. And we're also talking through the processes of how the FMEs, FMSs, and FMPs will be identified, and that will also be voted on or recommended by subcommittees 2 and 3. And those recommendations will actually come forward to the general RFPG on our next November 30th meeting, so they will be posted to the public 2 weeks prior to that on either November 15th or the morning of November 16th. So those will be coming from the subcommittee recommendations. And also as part of task 4, we're identifying needs and starting to draft the technical memo that will be, we're going to have a preliminary draft that will be included before our next November 30th RFPG meeting. So that will be posted by November 26th. I believe that's the Friday prior to the November 30th meeting. And we will still plan to deliver the official draft submittal on December 3rd for comment. So the 26th will be a preliminary snapshot of where we're at just for discussion at the next November 30th meeting. And then we discussed potentially having an additional RFPG meeting in the middle of December to officially go through comments on that draft review, or on the draft submittal that will be submitted on December 3rd. Any questions on any of that?
This is Jeff Bennett. I have a question. Yeah. Are we going to develop the flood management strategies in the next month? Is that what I'm hearing?
We are identifying potential FMEs, FMSs, and FMPs, and in terms of what will be included in the flood plan, that process is also in discussion with the subcommittees in terms of how to officially identify those and include those. And so yeah.
Will we miss our chance to get strategies put in if we're not able to make the next subcommittee meeting? That's what I'm getting at, I guess.
Oh, no.
Okay.
There will be further opportunities to identify FMEs, FMSs, FMPs, even after the tech memo. But the tech memo will represent our current progress to date with that collection.
The subcommittee meetings are coming really, really fast. And to be honest, I have a full schedule and it's hard to make all those meetings. There's not a whole lot of warning on them. That's just a comment. I understand that. I understand that everybody's got to work and we've got to move fast, but it's just hard to make all those meetings.
Yeah, totally understand. Sure. So any other comments or questions about the past several weeks of updates? I'll have some additional slides here. So as we discussed in the last RFPG meeting, our survey, stakeholder survey closing date was October 15th. Now, technically, it is still open. So if anyone, if you know anyone that wants to take it or be interested, please feel free to continue sharing the survey link. We have stopped our public advertisements and emails to the stakeholders. And here's a chart showing our responses over time. So we did have a few kind of early responses and then began really picking up at the beginning of September when we started our outreach, and then had some a good push in the middle of October, and then kind of have fallen off after we stopped advertising. So that's to be expected. Again, it is still public and still accessible if anyone wants to provide feedback, but we haven't been notifying or reminding anyone of that since the 15th. So in terms of the responses that we've received from the public and stakeholders, about half of the responses came from community representatives, including counties and the municipal governments. And then about a quarter came from other stakeholder partners, as well as another quarter came from the general public. And each category kind of have different questions that were tailored to the level of experience for each of the respondents. So as part of our open house meeting from last week, we also got a lot of really good and interesting feedback through our web map. Several individuals from EP Water attended, and other stakeholders, and provided their specific feedback on flooding events, in particular recent flooding from August. The web app, as we've shown previously, has the ability to you can upload photos and a description of the flood incident, and so we're going through those right now, and relating those to our findings in terms of identifying potential flood-prone areas. And we've seen numerous reports for arroyos, roadways, low water crossing, all these different areas, including failure, which has occurred in certain areas. So just wanted to mention that we're still receiving data there, and to continue providing feedback as you can. And so in terms of where we're headed by November 30th, we do have a couple more subcommittee meetings planned. For subcommittee 1, we're going to, and 2, we actually are scheduled to meet this Thursday. We also are planning a potential 4th meeting for subcommittee 1 that may be at the end of next week. So we sent out a doodle poll, I believe, yesterday to gauge availability, and we should have that meeting scheduled by tomorrow. There will also be a subcommittee 3 and 2 meeting next week, and then the following week, all to just sort of get us to where we can post our process and goals to the public, so we can vote on them by November 30th. So the big push this month is going to be the tech memo, and also the subcommittee meetings will be setting us up to vote at the November 30th meeting on these items here. So just keep that in mind, that by the next November 30th meeting, we will take a final vote from the RFPG on these 3 bullet points. And then that's pretty much it for the next month look ahead. And then Gilbert was going to share our budget progress to date.
Oh, yes, I know you all had asked us to give you all the progress at each meeting, so this is kind of give you a capture here that tasks 1 and 2A were about 60% complete. Tasks 2B, 3A, and 3B were about 50% complete. The task 4A and 4A is about 25%, and our biggest effort has really been in the public participation and plan adoption. We put a lot of advertisement out there, and as well as reaching out to the stakeholders to get all the information that we needed. So to date, we've got a total cost of, let me put my glasses on, about $364,500, and that's the invoice that I'm working on to work with Annette to get that submitted and presented to you all at the next meeting. Anybody have any questions?
Gilbert, it's Dave. Thanks for that presentation. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you, guys. Brian, go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Gilbert. So Moving on to the subcommittee 1 updates. We had some good discussion during our last subcommittee meeting on different flood issues that were brought forward by the subcommittee members. A large theme that has come up and has come up in our general meetings as well is the idea of the counties needing the authority to influence development in unincorporated areas. It is a challenge because of restrictions at the state legislative level. And some examples were brought forward about oil and gas well pads being built, which have exacerbated flooding issues. And also we've noted that those that any authorities that counties may need should be based on scientific and engineering principles. I think that's always a very great point to keep in mind. And then we've also been talking about general stream condition as for our region, creating issues with sediment and river condition overall. And we've been talking about nature-based solutions. And then design standards, we've been talking about minimum design standards as well as potential recommendations that we're going to make to the region as part of this flood plan. So some of the goals that have come up in our discussion cover these 4 broad categories: flood risk identification, such as increasing coverage of FMEs increasing the coverage of flood hazard data by performing FMEs. So over the next 10 years, finding ways to fund these flood evaluation studies and fill a lot of data gaps within our region. In terms of reducing risk, our subcommittee identified increasing the flood protection of unaccredited levees to meet levee accreditation requirements, and then mapping those effects to get the real benefits. We've talked about this in our general RPG meetings. We also discussed briefly the idea of a region-wide flood warning system and how that would have been very helpful during flood events like those that occurred in Marfa, and preventing deaths and just helping to keep people safe. And also, just in general, removing existing structures and low water crossings is a great goal to have going forward. In terms of floodplain management practices, our subcommittee would like to increase community NFIP participation. Currently, our region is about 75% participation, so a goal may be to increase that participation to 85% or 90% in the short term in the next 10 years. Also to encourage or improve the CRS rating participation, or for currently participating communities, as well as enrollment in the CRS programs, and allowing or encouraging communities to establish outreach and awareness programs, both on the flood risk, resiliency, and mitigation standpoint. And then lastly, from flood infrastructure design, we talked about recommending infrastructure design standards and incorporating nature-based practices as goals. So these tables, which I won't go through in detail, are sort of our current draft of goals. The highlighted text are the percentages that will be refined by the subcommittee in the coming weeks before the 15th. And those will set our targets as the RFPG in terms of where the region is targeting for the short term 2033 and for the long term by 2053. So I encourage everyone to read through these and provide any feedback as you have any, and then we will continue to add on to these and by the next November 30th meeting, we'll have a full list, and we'll provide a chance for everyone to vote and adopt those goals. So as I mentioned, these are just sort of our targets for this month in terms of the checkpoints, and our next subcommittee one meeting is this Thursday. We don't have any current RFPG actions at this time, but we're continuing to discuss those topics, and we'll provide more concrete information next month or in the next RPG meeting. Any questions on that? Okay, Chris.
All right, thanks, Brian. I'm going to discuss the last subcommittee 3 meeting, which took place October 22nd. As a reminder, the subcommittee 3 is based on FMEs and FMSs developing studies and strategies. And this last meeting, we talked about the process to develop an FME, or process to identify or screen out FMEs for areas that are lacking floodplain information. If they either have outdated floodplains or they don't have any FEMA floodplains, we talked about the strategy that we would use in those counties, which there are 4 counties in our region like that. The first step would be to identify the communities at risk. We would then use the best available data, whether that's Fathom or the FAFDS layer. We would also consider different storm events. We talked about whether we wanted to consider anything other than the 100-year, such as the 500-year. And this topic, we discussed potentially considering the 500-year in Presidio. It was brought up by Omar, and it was brought to our attention that they have had some significant floods in that area due to the multiple streams, the confluence of two rivers there. And so rather than do the 500-year or study the 500-year and come up with a solution that fixes the 500-year, we came to the conclusion that we should do an FME where we study coincidence analysis between the timing of the 2 streams in that area. But we would still be looking at solutions that address just the 100-year and not the 500-year. We also talked about whether future conditions would be considered outside of the El Paso region. There's very limited precipitation data about predicting future climate change in that area. It's very variable. And so we discussed excluding any future precipitation analysis. We also talked about future impervious cover analysis, whether that would be considered outside of El Paso County, where we have very limited data. And the Irrigation District EPC WID1 and Hudspeth County both brought up that there are some issues with new developments around the San Elizario region and in Hudspeth County, where maybe we should consider future conditions in how to address future development there. So that was something that Omar and Joanna McKinney from Hudspeth County were going to discuss and get back to us on certain locations and specify exactly what the issues they were having are. Some other methods that we might use to identify locations within these areas that are lacking floodplains would be to review stakeholder surveys, to review historical news, gauge data, or flood studies in the area. Next slide. Some other issues that were brought up by some of the stakeholders and the public who attended that meeting EP Water brought up that we needed to look a little bit more closely at inlet designs to make sure that we are capturing flows, that they're not bypassing sediment traps, that flows are not bypassing sediment basins during storm events. And so that's something that in revising the DDM, the Drainage Design Manual, we might have an FMS or some coordination to make sure that we're addressing that issue. USIBWC mentioned that there are sediment issues in the Alamito and Terneros creeks. And Dr. Bora from USIBWC did follow up with an email connecting me to other staff within USIBWC that can provide more information about those creeks. Those are outside of the jurisdiction for IBWC to implement projects in that area. However, it affects the sedimentation in the Rio Grande, so that could be a potential strategy or an FMP. We also had former USIBWC. Yes.
Is that Alamito Creek in Presidio County?
Yes.
Okay. There's well, I'm going to give you a call later, Chris. We'll talk offline.
Okay. Yeah, I know you had brought up some other issues around Alamito Creek. I believe that was a spot, a location where there was a recent death in one of the Martha storms, right?
Yeah, well, and just sediment issues related to the Rio Grande in general. I have a few things, questions for you, since I missed
Okay.
that last meeting.
Okay. Yeah, we could follow up after this meeting. Gabe Duran, who's also a former employee of USIBWC, was present, and he had some coordinates of locations where there were levee breaches during the 2006 storm event. He did mention that the levee breached on the Mexico side, and it was within 5 inches of overtopping on the US side during 2006. EPCWID and Gabe Duran both brought up some issues with structures that failed at Ascarate. And so we thank you for the participation. We had a good discussion, and we hope to have some more recounts of 2006 flooding at our next Subcommittee 3 meeting coming up on November 10th. We'll be sending out the agenda for that tomorrow, and that agenda will include the questions that we plan on discussing with the stakeholders regarding those historic flood events. Next slide. Yeah, so this just basically covers when the next meeting is, and we'll also just, in addition to reviewing the experiences of our stakeholders in the historical flood events, we'll also talk about the process of selecting FMEs and FMSs for the regional flood plan. Basically, how are we going to screen out and pick the strategies that we think are potentially feasible to include in the plan? Be another topic of discussion. So that's all I have. Any questions on the Subcommittee 3?
Not at this time. However, for record purposes, we're now moving on to item 10, El Paso Open House Meeting Update.
All right, thanks. So I think for this update, we were going to see if Marina from Barracuda would be able to present some feedback or findings from last week.
Yes, I'm here. Can we go to the next slide? Good morning, everybody. Marina from Barracuda PR here, giving you your update. We had our meeting on Wednesday. I know a lot of you were there at the Tech to Rose Center from 4 to 7. We had 30 people sign in. And we saw a lot of engagement, especially in the room with the roll plots and where you could upload your details into the laptops. And we also collected 18 comment cards.
which came from 2/3 of the attendees. I know a lot of you had already been engaged, so I know a lot of you did the surveys via online, which I think is why we had less comment cards than folks sign in. Next slide. They're not moving on my end. I don't know if they're moving on your end, Brian.
Oh,
They are. It moved to the,
Okay. And Omar was quite famous that day. He got to do a lot of TV interviews. We had 2 of our Spanish stations show up, and El Paso Matters environmental reporter, Danny Prokop. We also had coverage leading up to the meeting, and a lot of our friends from the stakeholder group, El Paso Water, et cetera, sharing the meeting on Facebook as well. So those broadcasts aired that day. And then we also had some photos of the meeting to share. I don't know if they made it into today's presentation, but I think we had a good meeting. I don't know if you all have any additional feedback for us as we look toward our next round of public meetings. Will be in Presidio and Pecos coming up. And I know Omar said that Presidio is a challenge, but we hope to get folks out there as well.
Hey, Melina, this is Omar. Just a quick request. As you are engaging Presidio and Pecos, if you could also let us know a bit of what you're planning to do and how you're planning to engage the public and the news media out in those regions. It really came as a surprise that we had to, for example, do interviews and things like that. It's just so that we can be ready. Like I would have prepared for those interviews if I knew they were coming up.
Yes. So yeah, we do a ton of outreach, and in Pecos particularly, they will come out. We've had several other types of public meetings, and they're really interested. So they will definitely come out, and I'll let you know as you know, the requests go out. So generally we'll draft the press releases about the meetings. We'll run them through you and through Annette too, so that you're aware. And then once they go out, that means that expect them to come back. Because I think you also did some interviews in Midland, if I'm not mistaken, and in a couple of areas out in West Texas when we initially put it out. But yeah, we engage with all media, so expect it. And yes, I will let you know when they're coming up, because they will continue to come up. In those areas, we do a lot of targeted Facebook ads and go through like different community groups because we find like that's how those communities out there engage within themselves. So we'll be utilizing those types of groups and their media to our advantage to let them know about the meetings coming up.
Thank you.
Any other feedback for us?
I know, I think somebody had a question, how many voting members attended? And I think as far as that were there, I think Omar was there, Dave was there, Gilbert Saldana, Gisela Dagnino, Sal Masood, Delbert Humberson was there. And I'm trying to remember if anybody else was there as far as from the voting members.
We made sure we didn't have any quorum, Richard.
Yeah, exactly. We had them staggered out there.
Okay. Thanks for watching that.
Do we have a date set for the Pecos and Presidio yet? Is that solid for February or not yet?
No, we don't have the date set yet.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to item number 6 from Sarah Douglas, an update from Region 15, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for working with me there. So just a quick update. They have a new point of contact at TDEM, Brian Hertek. At the last meeting, they reviewed tasks with their vendor half. The tasks of note were 1, 3B, and 4. They've made some progress on their goal setting. They have 6 overreaching goals, which are education, outreach, flood warning and readiness, flood studies and analysis, guidance, and then structure elevation / flood proofing. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. That's
No
really
problem.
helpful. I wonder if we can steal that education part of it. I think it's been brought up. I don't think we have formal strategy for it, do we?
We did
No,
identify
not
some
since.
goals. I don't know if we've formalized a strategy in particular, but we did set aside some outreach oriented goals.
Okay. All right. Anything else, AECOM, that you all want to bring up to today's meeting?
Gilbert, I think you're on mute if you're saying.
No.
I'm sorry. No, thank you, Omar. I think we've covered everything that we needed today, so we are good. Thanks.
I do have one item for consideration. With Jeff not being able to attend the meeting tomorrow, Jeff, would it be helpful if perhaps you and I can meet? You could talk about your strategies that you're suggesting. I can record those, and then I can make that available at our subcommittee meeting if that's something that everyone would be interested in doing, just to ensure that Jeff is able to get his strategies heard.
I can make tomorrow's meeting. I missed the last one though. And, any meetings next week I'll be out for. I won't make next week, but I'll be at the meeting tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Are you referring to the meeting on Thursday, November 4th? Which meeting? Do we have a meeting tomorrow?
No, on Thursday, the meeting Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's on Thursday, Jeff? Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I'll just miss the next, I'm missing the next committee, subcommittee 3 meeting. That was where the strategies get discussed.
We have that one set for November 10th, is that correct? Okay, so
Yes.
do you want to do the same? Do you want to do the same thing then, Jeff? We could.
I was going to call Chris after this
Okay.
meeting, so that should work.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So
All right.
number 11, we've already got 30 November scheduled. So.
Yes. We do.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
there, so for the next meeting, we do have it set for November 30th. We have to post it by the 15th. Is there anything else in between there that we would need to do with the general membership prior to the 30th at ECOM?
I don't think so. I think we've got all the other subcommittee meetings all taken care of there, Annette, so we should be good. We'll get the agenda items to you on time and the materials for the meeting itself.
Can you talk about the opening?
We have talked about having a meeting in December, middle of December, for the general RFPG to review comments or discuss the official draft submittal. Would we like to schedule that now, or we can send out a doodle poll maybe to get everyone's availability? But we're just FYI, we were thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, Gilbert and Chris, but I think we were discussing December 14th through the 16th as potential dates for that meeting.
Right. And that meeting's just to open it up to the group. As far as the tech memo is concerned, if you all had any questions or concerns, because we will be submitting the tech memo. We have a date of December 3rd to submit the draft tech memorandum to you all by that time.
I can go ahead and send out the doodle poll for the 14th, 15th, and 16th to see everyone's availability, and we'll set it. It'll be at 9 a.m. Each of those days, and see what everyone is, what everyone is going to be able to attend. I do have one item that, just as an update, I did receive a resignation letter from Jay Ornelas, who represents agriculture. I am going to be posting today the vacancy for generating utilities. And so I'll go ahead and include the agriculture as well. And so once I post that today, it'll be 15 days. So we can have that on our agenda for November the 30th. I see Richard giving me a nod, so I think maybe I'm okay with the process. Okay.
Yep,
All
because
right.
you guys amended your bylaws for the 15-day posting. If I could just have a minute to emphasize all voting members' attendance at the November 30th meeting. It sounds like there's going to be several key voting decisions, and at the November 30th, you'll be having the budget. It sounds like you'll be having the sponsor budget for you guys to review, the goals to vote on, the identifying process, the contract amendment with the additional funding. And if there's any new members coming on. So just stressing to have enough people attending the November 30th to have quorum and have votes progressing throughout that meeting.
Yes, that's a lot.
Right? We'll take care of it. All right. Anything else anybody needs to bring up at this time? Okay, hearing nothing, then entertain a motion to adjourn.
See if somebody else does it.
That's all.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, Stella,
Second.
Second.
Jeff, Bennett, and Dave,
Okay.
everyone.
All right.
All right, hearing a first and second, all in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.